Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and man, I remember being so nervous to host my first workshop. I honestly didn't sleep the night before. I was so nervous. For weeks beforehand, I was like going over and over and over these lists in my head of all the things that I had to think about, all the things I had to do to actually get people to come, all the things I had to prepare for the actual workshop, and just feeling generally so overwhelmed by the first one. So if you're in those shoes or you're thinking about running one of your own workshops, this video is for you. I want to give you 10 quick tips that'll help you get started and help you kind of troubleshoot some of the things that you're probably thinking of. And honestly, this could probably be a very long video, and it probably could be a two-part video. It probably should be a two-part video. So if while you're watching this, you think of any other questions or things that you're wondering about or things you're overwhelmed by when you're thinking about starting a workshop, leave them down in the comments below and I'll start taking note of them for 2.0 of this video. But let's just get right into it. Tip number one is to try and run a workshop for friends and friends of friends first. So I'm not talking about like your best friends and your mom. I'm talking about some distant friends, maybe some Facebook friends you haven't talked to or seen in a long time, and their friends. So you kind of want it to be a mix of familiar faces that you're a little bit comfortable around and that you will have natural conversation with at your workshop, but also distant enough that you're still being professional and you're still running it the way that you would run a future workshop. And at the same time, I want to also reiterate that I don't mean doing this for free. What I mean is for your first workshop, curate a group of people that you sort of know but sort of don't, that are comfortable with you and that you're comfortable around, and that you can also still run it as you would in the future, but then tell them that you're willing to offer it to them for cost, meaning you have to figure out how much your materials are going to cost and they just pay that so that you get the practice and they get the benefit of learning from you, and then it's all in exchange for feedback. So essentially you're going to reach out to somebody. Like when I did this, I reached out to people on my Facebook that, you know, I knew in high school or I knew were sort of crafty or who just, you know, tended to post creative stuff and might be interested. And I just casually said like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I want to start running workshops. I haven't done one before. I would love to do it for you for cost in exchange for you kind of giving me feedback and letting me know what you liked and disliked about the whole thing. Do you have anyone else who might want to come with you? And that worked really well for me. I actually did that for 2 or 3 different workshops. It wasn't just the first one. And I started really gathering some good feedback from people that way. And it also was a little bit less overwhelming than, you know, booking a venue and having tons of strangers show up all at once. I actually ran the first couple at my dining room table. Tip number 2 is to keep it small. I really recommend that for at least your first few workshops, you try and keep it between 6 and 10 people max. This works really well if you're going to try and do it at your dining room table like I did, or just in a small venue. You don't have to go crazy and book a room for 30 people or whatever. But it's also really great for people to be able to get one-on-one help from you, for you to feel comfortable and for you to feel like you actually provided value for people and they weren't just, you know, another number at your workshop. And it also lets people feel a little bit more connected to you so that they give you proper feedback at the end. The other benefit to this is that each person has enough space. I've found that there have been instances where I've tried to book more people into a workshop and they end up just being squished, and it really does affect the quality of their workshop. So try to keep it small, between 6 and 10-ish. Number 3, and this one might not apply to everybody, but for me it was really helpful. I absolutely scripted out the entire workshop on paper, down to the ums and ahs and things that I knew I would say. Like I wrote it out the exact way that I knew I would speak, and then I tried reading it out a few times to see kind of how it felt or if there was anything awkward. I also kind of wrote it out like fully in all the words, then I wrote it out in point form, then I wrote it out in a bullet list, and I just really practiced kind of the same way you would practice to do any sort of oral presentation, just trying to memorize certain things and get them into your system so that you really understand, you know, exactly what you're going to be teaching people. And that was really helpful for me because I was completely overwhelmed by like, what if I screw up? What if I lose my way? And then the other kind of like tip 3.5 would be to just print it out, like have your script with you, especially if you're doing this for the first workshop and people know it's your first one and you've offered it to them for cost. They're not going to judge you for having notes. So don't worry about having to have it completely memorized. Just have a general outline that you can completely follow. And if it makes you feel better, you can script it out fully and read it a bunch of times before your workshop starts. Tip number 4 is sort of related to the last one, where I remember feeling kind of overwhelmed at having these notes in front of me and I didn't want to be standing there reading them like this, even though I had written them. And one of the best things that I did, and actually I got this from Joanne, who I took my first workshop with, was to use a flip chart. So especially in a small group of like 6 to 10 people, you can absolutely just have a flip chart where before the workshop, you've sort of set it up like a mini workbook on the page, and you can use it as a guide. So for example, page 1 would have like, welcome to the workshop, and it's up while everybody's getting settled. And then when everybody's ready, you're gonna flip to page number 2 and it has intro to calligraphy and it kind of goes over the terms. And then page number 3 has the basic strokes, you know, and it walks you through. And so all these pages are set up, and it keeps you as the instructor on track so that you are working through the same stuff that's in the workbook in front of people. So it's really helpful. It's kind of just like an easy way to have notes for yourself, even if you don't want to be reading the one in front of you. Tip number 5 is don't go overboard. I remember being really tempted to have these beautiful tablescapes with all these wonderful decor pieces, and I remember wanting to put so many things into the supply kit so that people could take them home and really feel like they got a lot of value, and doing a lot of decor and, you know, refreshments. Everybody should have a water bottle, but also a coffee, but also a sparkling water, but also a juice, and then also a bowl of chocolates, and also, you know, it's too much. So really just try and rein yourself in. People are coming to learn the calligraphy. They don't really care about all of the extras. And as much as it might look pretty to have this beautiful table, people are just going to be impressed by, you know, their workbook, their station with their pens, and maybe a bottle of water. It's not something that you have to really overthink. Don't get too hung up on all of those things. I know I did, and I like set my table a week in advance and I was so excited about making it look so beautiful, but it can be really overwhelming. So unless that's something that's really fun for you, don't worry too much about it. I just want to talk a little more about the supplies kit in terms of not going overboard. I've seen a lot of people who will start workshops and feel like they have to put 5 different pens and 8 different types of paper, well, even like 8 full pads of paper, or, you know, like have this crazy workbook and all this stuff. It really doesn't have to be that complicated, okay? So in my kits that I run for my Basics of Calligraphy course, I have a Tombow dual brush, a Tombow Fudenosuke, and a pencil. And then I've got sheets of loose rhodia and my workbook, and that's it. It doesn't have to be fancy because those are the only things that you're gonna need in a basics course anyway. And then when you get into more detailed courses, you can have more than that, or if you can find some good deals on other things that you want to include in the kit, by all means, you can jazz it up a little bit, but don't freak out too much if that's all you have in your first workshop. And speaking of supplies, tip number 6 is to get wholesale pricing on your supplies when you're sourcing it for your workshops. It really is as easy as approaching the companies that you want to work with. So let's say Tombow or Pentel or whatever, wherever you want to get your supplies from, approach them. And usually all it takes is having a business number and you just sign up for their program and you can get wholesale pricing. It's not as complicated as people think. You don't have to be some special fancy influencer to get all of these wholesale prices. Just reach out to the companies that you want to work with and see if they offer wholesale pricing, because it really makes a huge difference. Tip number 7 is to bring extra kits with you. So remember that you need one for yourself for teaching. You're going to want the items in front of you so that you can hold them up and show them to the class. My first workshop, I forgot to have my own kit and I had to use participant number 1's kit to explain. And then also have a couple extras, because I have had instances where people thought they signed up for the workshop, even though they didn't, and then they showed up and I didn't have a kit for them. So I had to turn them away. But if you have an extra one, you can just make a spot for them at the table and then invoice them later. I have done that. It sounds crazy, but it actually happens. So just make sure you have extras. And then at the same time, I've had people whose pens have exploded or their pencil lead is not working properly, and I just give them the extra pieces from the extra kits. So just always have extras. Number 8 is don't be afraid to charge a high ticket price. And I'm not talking about for your first workshop where you do this at cost for friends and friends of friends. I'm talking about when you are running your workshops for real. I see a lot of people make the mistake of thinking like, oh my God, I can't charge $100 a workshop because it only cost me $15 to make the kit, and that's just unethical. Listen, it's not unethical. You're spending your time doing all the hours of prep for this workshop. You've spent time learning the skill yourself so that you can teach this workshop. You're teaching people a skill that they can use to make money for themselves. So that's part 2. And you're giving them all of these supplies included, and the actual, what's the word I'm looking for? Atmosphere, the event Like, it's like if you're paying for a movie ticket, you know, you're not walking away with something, you're just going to an event. So there is a piece of that goes into the price as well, plus all the time it takes you to set it up and tear it down. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, and I promise you that charging $100 per ticket is completely normal. At the same time, there are a lot of factors that go into that, and in the panic-free pricing course that I have, I'll link to it down below, there's a whole part on workshops walking you through absolutely everything that should go into your price and all of the different considerations. So if you're serious about pricing and you want to learn how to price workshops specifically, check out that course, I'll put it down below. Okay, tip number 9 and 10 are sort of like advanced tips, but really, really helpful to know. And the sooner you start doing them, the better it is. So tip number 9 is to invite a photographer and give them a seat at your workshop for free. So maybe this isn't for the first workshop that you do because it might be a little bit overwhelming to have a photographer and things won't be perfect. But once you've got the hang of it, invite a photographer to your next workshop where you've got everything perfectly set up, and offer them a seat in your workshop for free in exchange for photos. Or you can pay them if you can, but a lot of people when they're first starting out can't. So for the first, I want to say 5 workshops that I ever did, first real workshops that I ever did, I invited photographers and they were all more than happy to just be part of the workshop and take pictures while they were there. And then I get pictures for promotion for my next workshop. And it's such a great idea to have a photographer there when you're starting out. I can't even stress that enough. Just trust me, it's gonna make your next workshops sell a lot more. And number 10 is ask for feedback at the end. I know this can be awkward, but I'm not talking about like at the end of your workshop looking around the room and saying, hey guys, what did you think? How would you rate this on a 1 to 10? What was your favorite part? Do you like me? Do you like me? Are we friends? Don't do that. I'm talking about sending a survey after, and ideally making that survey anonymous. So you get everyone's email address, you're gonna send them a survey and say, I won't know who wrote what, and try and get a feel for what people liked, what people disliked, what people would change, and things that they didn't think were necessary, things they wish they had, and everything like that. Just trying to get a feel for all of it, and then don't just put it in a box after and feel sad if somebody gave you a bad review. Take that feedback and implement it into your next ones, and they're just gonna get better and better and better. The other piece to this is if you have anybody who raves and said they had a really great time, ask them if they would be willing to write a testimonial for you. If you have the pictures from the photographer and a testimonial from a past student, and you put that on your future sign-up pages for your workshops, they're gonna fly off the shelves in the future. So it's a lot of work right up front, but if you can do all of these things, you're gonna be doing so well so soon. Oh, and bonus tip number 11 is to have wine at your workshops and then have some for yourself so you don't feel as nervous. Okay guys, so these are my tips for your first workshop or your first few workshops. And I know it can feel overwhelming. I know there are a million things that I didn't cover in this video. So again, leave me a comment down below if you want me to answer something else, and I'll try and make a 2.0 video. But either way, I hope this was helpful. And I promise you, as you do this more and more and you do more workshops, you're gonna get into a groove and you're gonna feel so good about it. And it can be a really, really lucrative way to earn a living. And fun. It's really fun. So that's it for this one. Again, leave me a comment down below. Even if you don't have a question, I'd just love to hear from you. If this was helpful, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because I put out 2 new videos every single week, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, and good luck with your workshop.